Well, good afternoon, everyone. It's my pleasure to welcome you to this virtual community forum. This forum today is about Ann Hutchinson School. This is a day in the life of hybrid learning with the fully remote option. And Principal Annette Keene is our featured speaker today. She's going to be fielding your questions. I'd also like to introduce two of our board members, President Sally Veltiti, who's joined us on, I think, most of our webinars, and Judah Holstein, who's joined us on, I think, almost all of our webinars. And they've been terrific panel hosts and have really helped gather the questions. And we're very appreciative of their time and interest and support, and also of all of yours for joining us and being part of this discussion. The way it'll work today is very simple. You've already received, as a member of the Ann Hutchinson community, a presentation that has walked you through a lot of information. So there's also been a question and answer form available, and we have some questions that were submitted ahead of time. Dr. Keene's going to start by answering those. There will not be a lengthy presentation or any sort of PowerPoint, just going to be a discussion of Q&A. And Dr. Keene in a moment is going to start with the questions that she's already received and take care of answering those. And what we anticipate is that you may have additional questions, and you are certainly free, and we encourage you to submit them here. And if you notice at the bottom of your screen, there's a chat icon. If you click on that chat icon, your question will be submitted to our panelists, and we'll take a look at those, and we will, after Dr. Keene has completed the first round, we'll start posing those questions to her for the next round of questions. So far, we have 45 participants and growing. I'm glad you're here to join us. Just want to remind everybody that this, like all of our sessions, this is being recorded and will be available for anyone to reference in case you couldn't make this live. Anyone will be able to get the questions and answers by video later on our website, eufsdk12.org. And we'll put that up on the chat in just a moment. You can go there and get a lot of information. You can see all of the previously recorded informational sessions, and you'll be able to get just all the information we can possibly give you right at that one-stop shop. So I think with that said, we're going to go ahead and jump right in. Dr. Keene, the floor is yours. And if you'd like to start by answering questions you've received and greeting everyone, we'd welcome that.
Okay, great. Hi, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. It's good to see everyone, even though I can't see all of you. Thank you for submitting questions in advance. It's been really helpful to make sure we're thinking through every aspect of reentry. So I'll just start with our initial question was around drop-off and pickup for actual walkers. I think in the information I sent out previously, we focused more on the bus and students who were coming by car. So for actual walkers, you will be able to drop off at the same time. So we're open at 8:05 for arrival this year, and you can come straight to the back circle, where I will be with several staff members receiving students for entry. So there's no real protocol. You can walk up. The only issue that might come up is that if we have a few students that are waiting, social distancing, your student would have to take their spot, but on the sidewalk, there's going to be yellow tick marks every 6 feet. So it should be very clear that if we're backed up a tiny bit, where you can stand with your student. So I hope that's clear. You can just walk on up to the back circle. And then the additional question about actual walkers was where those parents should stand while they're waiting to pick up for dismissal. So as I mentioned before, in our back circle, there's going to be on the sidewalk tick marks 6 feet apart for the students to stand. And if you arrive early before dismissal, any grassy area in the back circle would be a fine place to stand, because that'll give you a nice distance between yourself and the classes. Once we have our class list finalized, I'll release a little map that'll just show you in general where the grade levels will be standing so that you'll know where your class, your child's class will be. And in the first couple of weeks of school, we'll have big signs posted for you to be able to see it pretty clearly. The next question we had was about in class, what the desk procedures will be. And specifically, a parent asked, will my child have their own desk, or will a Tuesday, Friday student share a desk with a Monday, Thursday student? So because we were limited in the number of desks we can put in the classroom, students are sharing desks. But we anticipate with the routines we've put in place that it should work pretty smoothly. We have systems in each classroom where students at the end of the day can store their personal items, their workbooks. You know, for example, some of our grade levels have lockers, others have cubby systems, and those are unique to each child. So they have their very own, and they can store everything at the end of the day until they come back next time. And then that will allow our custodians to be able to sanitize those desks before the new cohort comes in the morning. The next question was around the remote learning days. So what time do children need to be online on the virtual days, and when will they log off? Will they require an adult to help them navigate through everything? So right now, I can say that the remote learning will certainly be taking place between those hours of 8:23 and 2:50, our school hours, and you will receive a schedule as soon as we're able to share it through your child's Google Classroom in terms of 3 really important parts of the remote learning day. So there's the morning meeting, there's English language arts, which is their reading and writing, and mathematics. So those are the times that you will be required, your child will be required to log on. And so we're going to try to keep those times as consistent as possible to help our families. So you can look for that schedule shared through the homeroom teacher's Google Classroom. And in terms of requiring an adult to help them navigate through everything, I think in the beginning weeks of school, that's definitely going to be helpful for your child and for us. I will say that on the in-person learning days, the teachers are really going to be, not only building relationships, but also building the rules and routines for in-person learning, but also for remote learning. So what we're hoping to see, as early as our second graders, is that students are becoming more independent as time goes on with logging in on their remote learning days and being able to navigate their Google Classroom. So in addition to being able to have the teachers support on their in-person learning days, we also have our new integrated special class, which is integrating library and technology. Mr. O'Neill is going to be teaching that class this year, and he will also be focusing with his groups when they meet with him in library technology on learning those platforms at their developmental level to support and kind of push along, speed up their progress in terms of the independence on those remote learning days. So I hope that answers that question. The last 2 questions were around recess and will it take place on the field and the play set. So I did want to share that we're not going to be using the Ann Hutch playground for at least the month of September. And instead, we're going to be making full use of our fields. So, we are very lucky at Ann Hutch. We have a great space, outdoor space in terms of our fields. And so what we're going to be creating with flags similar to, what returning families have seen on field day is, separate zones for each class or each group of students. So they'll be able to, head out to the field with the monitor assigned to their class, and their space will be clearly marked, as well as a flag where they can, if they want to take a mask break outside, they can kind of hustle over to that flag, and that will be a safe space for them to take their mask break. And we'll be teaching them that routine as well. In addition, we're working with our amazing PE teachers who are working with our new supervisor of PE, Tommy Lehman, and we're going to really focus the first couple of weeks of PE on teaching students some games that are appropriate in this time of social distancing. So we're hoping in each zone to have an organized game that promotes social distancing but still provides outdoor fun. But then also we're thinking about, for students who opt out but still need to stay in their zone, a menu of activities that they could do independently or with a buddy who's nearby. So that's the current plan for recess. So I can take any follow-up questions related to those items, or perhaps there's more questions that have come in.
Yes, actually there are, if I will start. So it's one of the participants asked, they said that I've noticed a lot of construction at Ann Hutch over the summer. What improvements have been made, and did it include anything improve the air quality, airflow? Example, I've noticed some sort of new fans installed into the classroom windows.
Oh, wow. Okay. So we did have a lot of work done with our boilers. I am not an expert on what exactly that was, but I know it was important, and that took some time. We had, we did, in terms of the fans, we did order more, I guess, stronger or kind of industrial size fans for our classroom windows. And those have both intake and exhaust features, and they've been added to each classroom. The other great construction that went on this year are related to two other important spaces. One is in terms of our security office. I know a lot of families were concerned about the location when the security desk was moved out of the hallway, but we've been really lucky to carve out a security office. I can only describe it as, it was a part of the main office, but it now has a cutout, a window that looks through to our main foyer. So, and the security officer will have access, through a small door there to be able to patrol on foot the lobby area. So it's much more, it's a much clearer visual on the front door in addition to the cameras. And I think it's a great added safety feature until we're able to create that secure vestibule. I would also add that we had some construction go on in the nurse's office. And so that was to create a safer space in terms of designating areas for routine visits or students who are well. So they would have a separate area if they have an injury at recess and need a Band-Aid, or if they're coming for routine medication. And then the construction allowed us to create another space in the event a student is sick. And it has an area where they can be supervised and close to the nurse's office, but still in their own designated space. I think those were the major projects.
Thank you. Oh, good, I'm unmuted. Okay, so the next question we have is, on snow days, will there be remote instruction or will it be a day off? So looking a little bit ahead, maybe Dr. Glass or.
Yeah, it's a question we had at yesterday's Waverly session too. So I don't think we should assume that that there will be no more snow days and that they will be automatically converted to virtual learning days. And part of the reason for this is that if you think about currently with the virtual learning that will be occurring, whether you're in the fully remote option or whether you're in the hybrid option, teachers will be delivering instruction from school, right? All of the instruction is, teachers are not going to be delivering instruction from their homes. They're going to be delivering it from their classrooms. So all of their materials, the webcams, the desktop computer stations, all of that is going to be located in their classroom, not at home. So I don't know that we're going to be, it would be easy for teachers to make a switch on a dime to be able to suddenly deliver from home when they're not really set up like they were last spring to do everything from home. That said, we've learned a lot more about how to flexibly deliver material. So I would never, completely rule it out, but that is not our intention out of the gate to do that. I think we're going to be more likely not having. I don't think snow days are quite yet a thing of the past. If we were delivering everything from home, it might maybe more so, but I guess I'll leave it at that. And it could depend on the circumstances too. If the reason we're out is because of some there are power outages all over the place and, tree limbs down and we've got internet connection issues, it's not going to work either, right? So there's just a case by case, but I think you should assume we may have snow days still.
All right, thank you. And while we're on winter, have you been able to think ahead to what recess will look like over the winter?
We'll be honest, we're not there yet, but we have, as soon as we, well, I will say that we've planned for inclement weather, right, in the fall. So basically, once the students have started the transition to recess time, in the event that the weather is so bad that they can't go out, we have a routine where they can go for a walk essentially in the building, leave the classroom for a brief period. And at that point, the custodians are going to clean the classroom, and then they can return. And we're working on a menu of activities for recess in the classroom. They would still be in their socially distanced spaces, but it's, for example, like movement activities, dance and movement related to what's using the smartboard, tabletop games, and even some technology that they might be able to interact without being right next to each other. Once that menu is finalized, I can definitely share that with families too, to give them a sense of the options for indoor recess. We always face that challenge though with the winter when it's not, one day every once in a while, when it becomes several days in a row. So that's something that we'll have to really consider and start thinking about.
Sally, you're muted.
Thank you, Judah. Did you want to take some? You're so good at putting them in the form.
Sure. There was a question, I'll just go back to toward the beginning. There was a question about drop-off for self-contained classrooms. How is that going to look?
Okay, so most of our self-contained students come on the bus, but also if they come by car or are walking, they are always encouraged to come use the front door, the front circle, the glass doors. We will have our same, basically there's going to be a new arrival team that is focused on checking to make sure all the screening forms have been received and taking any temperatures that need to be taken from any students who did not submit their screening form. But then once they're through that initial process, the same special education arrival team will be there to welcome the self-contained students and to bring them to their classroom. This year we have changed arrival in terms of students being able to go directly to the classroom. So I think that will be very helpful, given the constraints that we're facing.
To follow up to that question, that you mentioned, with the temperature, there's a few questions that are coming out about the app and the usage of it. So will people be doing it on the app? Will they need to print it out? If the student doesn't have a phone, how will that information get to the school? How will they know that it's been done or not? So that was two questions combined into one.
And also, just came in while you were talking, is when we're expecting the app to come out.
So I'm not sure exactly when the app is going to come out, but what I'm hoping for is, very soon we would be oriented to the app and we would be able to see exactly how the information comes through. Our first goal would be that we encourage families and actively remind families, because I get that this is a new routine for everybody, that you get that information logged into the app early so that the school can see it. So I imagine that through this app, we're going to have the information for which students are screened as we're welcoming them into the building. And given that we're dealing with half the student body and our arrival team is, going to be significant and trained, I feel like we'll be able to do a good job of making sure everybody either has their form or their temperature is taken. So I think once we have the details of the app, we're going to be orienting families to it. But then also, in the first week or 2 or 3, we might make slight changes to that procedure to adapt. But I think we're staffed to do it well, to start out the school year.
There's 3 questions that I think they kind of go together. What is the percentage of students who are going fully remote learning at Ann Hutch? What is the approximate class size of the children in the hybrid model? And is there a plan to go fully in person if the hybrid model works well? So it's probably a combination for both you and Dr. Keene and Dr. Glass to answer.
That last question, is there a plan to go hybrid? If the hybrid goes well, is there a plan to go fully in person? Is that
Yes.
the last part of the question?
Yes.
I think I understand that. Okay.
So I believe from our conversations this summer that, and I hope I'm answering the question, is that, we're looking at this as with like a phase-in mentality. So, making sure all the precautions are in place and making sure everything is going well and safely. But then at that time, we would, look to reevaluate and see what more that we could do.
So right now, the percentage of students who wanted to go fully remote at Ann Hutch was about 16.5% as of the survey. But that seems to be consistent with where we were at district-wide. I think we were at an average of 16.5 district-wide, so it's pretty consistent. I have not looked, Annette, I don't know if you've looked at the class sizes, or you have any sense of that. I think that was the second part of the question. So I know you're still working through that, and if you want to give some approximations if you have them, but you may not have them right now. So
no, absolutely. I think I didn't, I missed part of that question. I apologize.
That was a 3-parter.
Sorry.
Oh, that's okay, Sally. I should be able to handle a 3-parter. So basically what we're looking at now is that we have about 1 section at each grade level that is fully remote. And it's working out pretty well for us in terms of being able to designate 1 teacher at each grade level to that group. And then basically what's, making the class lists a bit of a process is then, removing those students to the remote group and then also achieving a balance through the rest of the sections. And we're definitely, attending to the work that the teachers did in the spring in terms of connecting students together and any parent considerations that came in the spring. We're trying our very best to still honor those given these constraints. And those classrooms look like they're balancing out pretty well with the, an estimate of, 10 to the maximum of 14 in each cohort.
And just this idea, to answer the third part of the question a little bit, I mean, if one of the challenges that we're facing with, like, if it goes really well in hybrid and we, if we only have 16.5% of the students fully going in full remote, and that's about the percentage we anticipated, we still have 83% roughly of the students who, are in with us, right? And so we have space challenges if we try to bring everybody back to a fully operational mode, if I'm understanding the question right. So, the way the guidelines are structured right now, we have to have 6 feet of distance and we have to have, masks on. And in order to do that, that's why we're at hybrid. I mean, according to the regional percentages, they're pretty low, right? If the guidelines we had gotten said that students, you can have 20 students in a classroom with masks, that would be one thing, but right now they don't allow us to do that. And so as we abide by those guidelines, we really can't get past hybrid right now. So something has to give, outside of the school system. The guidelines would change. You have a vaccine, you have more rapid testing, you have, the virus going down even further than it is in our region, something like that, where they would change the specifications for bringing students back. And that has not occurred right now. So we don't see a clear path to being able to come back fully until something else gives. Because, if we had fully remote at 50%, maybe, but we don't, and we're not encouraging that, or, we're just offering choice right now, right? We're trying to provide something for everybody that they can work with.
Well, there was also a related question that came in as part of another question, which was, do you know when the classroom teacher assignments will be published and shared with parents?
We are getting very close to finalizing those lists. I can't give an exact date at this time, but the goal is definitely as soon as possible. And I want to thank, any second grade families that are on the call who are willing to switch cohorts to help me balance the classes. Thank you. I really appreciate that. But I'll try to get a date and get that out to families soon.
Thank you.
And I'm going to chime in and just, provide a little bit of another perspective on that, because while we want to get that out soon, we realize that once we give you those, it's very hard to ungive you those, right? When we tell you who your assignment is, that's a commitment. And, there's some very tight windows in here. Not much margin for error. If we have 14 in a classroom and somebody moves in, or, whatever, we start to really rub up against the social distancing maximums, right? So we just want to make absolutely sure, and this is a way we've never been before. And, Dr. Keene has been working, very diligently with all the data. We want to make sure we don't have any mistakes, that we haven't missed anything, someone wasn't, miscategorized in the choice that they made, that everybody, if there was an adjustment made to cohort, that's for real. We want to verify all of that, because when we make this commitment to you, we don't want to take it back. We have a hard time walking that back. We know that's painful and difficult. So if we do take a few extra days, it's just because we want to be assured that we've got this right, because this isn't a routine like any we've done before.
There were a few questions about Chromebooks. One question was, I don't know if you want me to rattle all them off in one thing, but I'll do that and we can repeat them if necessary. One question was for parents who indicated that in the form that they would need a Chromebook. When do we expect that to happen, and what's the process for getting them? And then the next question was just whether the expectation is that second and third graders will be bringing their Chromebooks back and forth to school, or if they'll have somewhere in school that they can leave them, or at home if they should be leaving home.
Okay, I'll answer the second part first. You know, we are going to recommend at this time that the students are bringing their device back and forth from school. And I will say this, you know, at the same time, when the children are in person with their teachers, we are definitely prioritizing that kind of small group individualized instruction and those interactions with the teacher that are so valuable to students and that are at the core of this hybrid model and why it's important to us right now. At the same time, we think it's really important, even as our youngest students in second grade, that we are supporting them and explicitly teaching them how to engage as learners on those remote days. So they will need it for that kind of orientation in person, and then they would have to, of course, bring it home for their remote learning days. The timeline for the technology department, I'm not quite sure about that. I don't know if Dr. Glass knows.
I have a September 2nd as a possible, like a tentative possible distribution date for Ann Hutchinson students, and more detail will come out if that date, that was a tentative date. And I may be that distribution is at the high school, middle school campus as well, because that's where the devices are located. So there'll be a schedule coming out soon, but right now, tentatively, don't hold me to this exactly, but it looks like September 2nd was what is proposed for Ann Hutchinson. And
another piece that seemed helpful that the technology department shared with us recently, and for families that are bringing their own device, is that they're going to host time at the high school where you can bring that device and get it up and running on the district's wireless. So that'll be helpful for families too.
And it looks like, and that's going to help us save bandwidth. And it looks like the tentative date for Ann Hutchinson for that is let's see, would it be the it looks like Thursday, Thursday, the week of, would be the, I don't know. It said, I've got to have some conflicting dates here, but it's that week probably of the first week in September, maybe that Thursday of that week. But that, again, that schedule will be coming out, and that'll be a date, and then they can optimize the settings for you on your device so that it works well. And I'm just going to put in a plug asking all families. I know this is an imposition for us to ask you to provide a device, and the district is seeking to provide devices wherever necessary, but we're trying to do something ambitious here, and that is to try to achieve as much of a one-to-one saturation as we can. We have about 900 devices in total maximum right now. We've ordered a couple hundred more, but they're not going to get here, soon. Everything is back ordered because of the pandemic. So if you have a device you can send with your child, it is an immense help, and it could open up doors for us to be able to have devices in both places, which really gives us maximum flexibility. So we know it's an imposition. We don't overlook that or take that lightly, but if you have a device you can send, it doesn't have to be anything fancy. It just has to run Chrome, and it should work just fine on our network.
While you were talking about Chromebooks, a couple other Chromebook questions came in. One was, what about the self-contained classes? Are they going to bring their Chromebooks back and forth on their days?
Correct.
Okay. And then the other question was, what do you envision? How much time do you envision the kids will be actually working in their computers in the classroom?
Well, I just want to go back to the special education small class. If they are coming if they're coming 4 days a week, it might be that they only have to bring it back and forth on that Wednesday. So we will clarify that. We're gonna, obviously build the routine that makes the most sense for the children. So that might be just on Wednesdays, but I'll confirm that. And what was the second piece, Judah?
Someone asked about what the vision of how much time the kids would actually be working with the computers in the classroom would be.
So I think it would be, targeted lessons about learning the platform. So going to Mr. O'Neill's library technology class, that would be once a week for 45 minutes. And then I would say with the homeroom teacher, perhaps a half an hour, 45 minutes at the max. And then we also, another important piece is that because the devices are being pooled, for lack of a better word, and dispersed throughout the district, we'll need those devices to do some of our critical screening assessments. And so that's like another important aspect of why we would need the devices in school. A lot of those are on platforms online.
All right, and sort of related, it came together with a Chromebook question, so it seems like it's related. What about other school supplies? Are there any additional school supplies that we envision that kids will need besides the item purchased for in-school pickup, and also for kids who are either remote or for things that they should have at home for virtual days?
Right. So I have been meeting with the teachers over the summer, and we've been thinking about what they might need specifically related to the hybrid learning model. And they have been submitting those items to me, and we've been taking care of most of it at the building level. But, there might be the case, particularly with art, that we ask families if they're able to provide certain supplies, art supplies, but in general, we're doing pretty well, and we feel like we're not going to need anything beyond the typical supply list. I also want to loop back just to the idea of the devices being used during the school day. Another important idea that we're exploring is how we connect students across the cohorts and across to the remote learning sections. So there might be, opportunities for collaboration and projects that would bring those students together. And of course, we would need to do that, through the device. So that kind of interaction across the cohorts and collaboration would be important too.
And then I was going to loop back to something, but a good question just came in. Should the kids bring the school supplies in on the first day that they're here and bring them to the classroom? Is that the expectation?
Sure, if they have them. And there'll be plenty of staff members there, because I know sometimes, especially for the second graders, it can be kind of heavy. So there'll be plenty of people there to help them carry them and sort through it.
Excellent. Okay. Speaking of the first day of class, earlier someone asked, since the first day of class is a Thursday, which is a B day, will there be communication for what the kids who are starting off remote, it'll be their first day. How are we going to handle that, I guess, is the question.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think so. The teachers and I have 3 days before the students return, and we've developed some ideas over the summer, but we're hoping to kind of finalize exactly what those first couple of weeks will look like for the students on their remote days. And so we will clearly communicate with families what to expect for those first couple of days. But I will say that, typically in the beginning weeks of school, lessons are a little bit shorter in length, but you have more lessons because students are still developing their stamina over the summer, and this is through the spring and over the summer. But we will definitely give a clear expectation for that, absolutely.
Also navigating back to some of the questions from earlier that are sort of in theme now. You mentioned about art with school supplies. There was a question before about band. Is fourth grade, how do we envision drop off for band and the process for band? Is that going to be different than previous years? And
It will be. I think the biggest difference is that the band students won't be able to play their instruments for at least, I believe we've agreed to the first month of September. So we're in the process of designing what exactly that will look like for band students in terms of what the instruction will be and where they will be located. But most likely the drop-off system will be the same, but the nature of how we do it will be different. But we will confirm that soon.
okay, and also a similar question for the special education students that in the past had slightly different procedures. So you'll be communicating, I assume, to them as well, their new procedures, correct?
Right, and I think for arrival and dismissal, a lot of their procedures will be the same. And if the student has a one-to-one monitor or a classroom monitor, that support will be the same. They would just be, adhering to the social distancing measures during those times.
There's another pickup question that was in the beginning. It says, if a parent is picking up multiple children, will the older sibling be able to pick up the younger sibling at his or her classroom at dismissal so both children can come out together?
Right. So what we've redesigned dismissal to do is basically we're going to connect with the car earlier on, and we're going to use a walkie-talkie system to connect the children with your car. So it might not be the sibling going to get the younger student. It might be a faculty runner or support person. But once we know, who you are and who you're picking up, we'll make sure both children get to your car.
Thank you. So there's a question about some supplies. For supplies, assume that wipes and hand sanitizer could be of any brand, given the scarcity of brands like Purell, Clorox, Lysol, etc. I think that would be kind of coupled with, do you want the students to bring in those supplies, or do you provide them and the cleaning supplies?
Right. I don't think those supplies are on the PTA supply list, although I would have to double check. I think those are items that the teachers have requested individually as classrooms in the past. But I would say right now from our facilities department, we've added the hand sanitizing stations, all along the hallways and inside the classrooms themselves, in addition to our sinks. And we are fully stocked to keep those loaded throughout the year. So I don't see a tremendous need for either hand sanitizer or cleaning materials. I think the facilities department has that in stock in boatloads.
Are we intending to restrict the kids from bringing their own sanitizer?
No, if a student wants to keep that, in their book bag or, a lot of times they have it hanging off their lunchbox, that's fine too.
And then if they ordered the supplies, I guess previously through the PTA or the school, those will be left in the classroom like last year?
Correct, right. So those will be in the classroom and those are labeled with your child's name on it.
All right, and then going back to pick up and drop off, there was a question if a parent has one student who's special ed and another student who's general education, will they get instructions on how to deal with picking up the kids together as well?
Yeah, the family can email me what they feel will work best, or I can make a recommendation based on the traffic patterns. And then if they try it out and it doesn't work, that's something that's totally flexible. But we can definitely have all the kids in one location. That's not a problem.
Okay, there was a question about how you foresee the morning meeting being conducted.
So morning meeting is the foundation of social emotional learning. So it's a time to kind of greet each other, think about the day ahead, and get excited for the learning that's about to happen. I do see it as an important piece of connecting the two groups together. So it would be structured in a way for the students to be able to view it from home. Mostly it happens as the first lesson of the day, but because our instructional schedules are built around our special schedule, it is possible that morning meeting wouldn't be the same exact time in every classroom. So that would be part of the schedule that the family would receive for the remote learning days.
So there's two questions that kind of go together, at least I think they do. Regarding report cards, how will grades be presented? Pass, fail like last semester, or reverting to the standard grading system? And then the other question that kind of goes along with this is that, will there be any impact on the curriculum in terms of what would typically be covered in the academic year? So grades, how are they going to be done? And how is this impacting the curriculum?
Right, so the most important work would be prioritizing the standards within the content areas that we know require the most time and effort and are foundational for the students' overall learning. So we are in the process of doing that, and that's part of a process that will be continuing. So we will be prioritizing certain standards in the curriculum, the most important, the most foundational. We do believe we are going to be able to assess in a much better sense and really know at the beginning of the year where a child is in terms of their reading and mathematics, especially given the spring, what everyone went through. So those are two important pieces. And then the report card. So the report card, from where we are right now, I believe every effort is going to be made to keep the report card as it has been in the past, meaning specifically listing those standards of learning and getting accurate measures on there for each child. We might make slight adjustments based on the standards that we're prioritizing, but I don't see it at this time as being a pass-fail. I think that was something that was really just necessary for this spring.
Thank you.
There's a related question. There are a couple. One is very specific. Can you express sort of your vision of how the teacher will interact with students that are present and remote at the same time? Someone brought up specifically like a math lesson, but I think it's probably a general question that hopefully you can address.
Okay, so I think it's helpful to think of the overall or the most common structure for our lessons in elementary school. So the first piece of the lesson is really what we call whole group instruction. And that's, you have the visual of the class gathered at the rug, and the teacher is presenting a brief, mini lesson to the students, really targeting the day's instruction. So for the students who are in person that day, they'll be on the rug, attending to the teacher as usual. The students at home would be live streaming in. So usually the teacher's presentation is connected to their smart board, or focused on the teacher, you know, perhaps with like a read aloud or something like that. So the camera would be focused on that main area, whether it's the smart board or the teacher. And so the children at home would have access to viewing the lesson. And then that's a whole group instruction that's usually 10, 15 minutes we recommend at the elementary school level. And then the students are basically released to practice independently. So at that point, you know, I imagine from where we're at now in planning that the students in the classroom would obviously be working independently and the teacher would be supporting them in school. But then in the Google Classroom, the students who are at home would have access to the same assignment and they would be working within that same time period. Although it really wouldn't be necessary during independent practice to be streaming into the classroom, so to speak. So I would imagine that at that time, the teacher usually leaves like a few reminders or like a workflow for students about independent practice. So the students at home would probably be viewing those reminders or some anchor chart or key visual from the lesson. And then the third part of the lesson is usually like what we call a share or a wrap up, where everybody comes together to reflect on their learning. And that's something that, like whole group instruction, would be appropriate for the students at home to also be live streaming in to be able to hear the sharing piece as well.
Okay. And then there were some follow-up questions that came in during that. So one question that really is I guess, directly related. If someone is at home on that day, how will they engage the teacher then? Will they be able to engage the teacher during the lesson?
So we're recommending at this time that the child would, you know, bring any questions or work samples with them the next day. I mean, a lot of the work samples will be on the Google Classroom, so that might not be relevant. But that's where we're at right now. That might change. But I think the questions and the follow-up would be prioritized during the in-person days.
And then if a child misses a remote session, one parent used the example of the parents working and can't help or whatnot. Is there a penalty? Is there a way to make up the work? How do you envision that?
So we will be, a big difference from the spring is that we are going to be taking attendance on the remote learning days. And that's going to be a daily check-in that is going to be an assignment in the Google Classroom that the child fills out. You know, we monitor very closely how children are doing on their remote days and what families are facing. So I do feel like we would approach that on a case-by-case basis. So, you know, I think open communication between families and teachers, and the teachers always loop me in as well. You know, we will seek to understand your constraints and figure out a way to make the remote learning, you know, as impactful as possible for your child.
And then again, you're pointing right at the next question, which is sort of AIS, academic intervention service related. If kids are falling behind, or if kids fell behind because of the situation in the spring, what do you envision? You know, how do you envision dealing with that?
Yeah. So now that, you know, once we get the class list finalized, it'll be very clear to see how students who are qualifying for AIS, you know, how often how big their groups will be when they are in person. So any student who needs academic support or a supporting service of any kind, that will be prioritized during their in-person days. And we do feel that the impact of the intervention will be powerful in the sense that the group will most likely be smaller. So it should be more targeted. But we are definitely going to look at each student's needs and see what layers we might have to put in on the Wednesdays and the remote learning days. And, you know, we'll look at our staffing, and we'll definitely be able to give families a clear plan.
What about assessing either, in other words, right now, what's the process for recognizing or assessing that someone needs IAS? Will you have an assessment at the beginning of the year to determine that? Will it be something that teachers will make recommendations based on interactions? Or can you speak to that a little bit?
Right. So we do have a screener at the very beginning of the school year. So students take that screener. We analyze the outcomes, and we take a look at who would benefit from that extra support.
Okay. And then, so there was a comment, and I'll just express it, that the daily checklists for remote instructions were helpful in the spring, and that they would be helpful if continued this year. So I'll express that from the person who made that comment. I sort of agree.
Thank you.
Someone mentioned that they recognize it's a very stressful time for the teachers as well. And is there anything that the parents and the community could do to support them? Anything in particular?
What a great question. I appreciate that. You know, we have a social emotional learning program that I'm really excited about that we're implementing this year. It's called Second Step. And, you know, it's going to really strengthen the work that we've been doing with the Ann Hutch Has Heart program in terms of bolstering our students' resilience and social emotional skills. But what's interesting about Second Step is that they've also developed over the summer a piece that's targeted towards the adults in school buildings and the teachers. And so it's a really interesting series of professional development kind of experiences, 10, 15-minute experiences that we can do with teachers to promote their self-care and their resilience and their mental health. So I'm excited about that. That being said, I think there's, you know, possibly other ways that parents could support, and I'll have to think about that more, and I'll get back to the PTA for sure.
Thank you.
And I'll just, you know, add to that it sounds, you know, doesn't sound very specific, but I don't think it can be underestimated that just patience and kindness and understanding, you know, all around goes a long way. Understanding and recognizing that what we've asked our teachers to do both this spring and this year, you know, professionally is a lot like what we've asked you as families to do in this last year. I mean, kind of everything is different, and in many ways, you know, you're facing impossible or very challenging constraints. You know, if you're home working, trying to work and help your child learn, right? I mean, in the same way, teachers are now having to reinvent so much of what they do, and, you know, having to tend now to different cohorts and plan for different cohorts at home and in school, and all the things that were time efficient and routinized and automated are not so anymore. So, you know, if any of us, and I include myself in this, you know, are not as efficient or don't get back to you as quickly, or maybe don't have all the answers all the time, and it's frustrating for you, just that little bit of understanding goes a long way. When someone sends me an email and says, listen, I know you're contending with a lot right now. I hate to add one more thing. I just want to let you know, can you help me with this? And by the way, I appreciate what you're doing. That's huge for me. That is huge for me. And that's going to be huge for all of us, huge for our teachers And I know our staff will try to extend that same courtesy, you know, toward our families, knowing that you're under a lot too.
Here's a maybe easy one. Well, and thank you for both of those explanations. Are students allowed to wear neck fans if they're hot with their masks on?
I'm not sure I know exactly what a neck fan is.
I'm gonna assume that, and I think I've seen it, there's either one that kind of looks like when I get my hair done and it's all there. There's one that comes around that kind of looks like two fans here that look like it would be earphones, but they come on your neck and they are fans here. And then I've also seen one that comes out and the fan's kind of in front of the child's face, but down a little bit further. So that's what I'm assuming, since those are the two that I've seen, that's what I'm assuming they would be.
Okay.
I'm gonna
There's
just
little portable ones that are just, you know, on your lanyards that, you know, the little handheld ones that just hang on your neck in a lanyard.
Yeah, I'm just going to jump in because I've never had this question. I never even considered such a thing. I can understand why someone would want to do that. But I would say it, I would doubt it at this point. And I'm saying because I'm just considering it now for the first time. One of the worries is you're going to be moving air right off of somebody's face in their mask where they could have some germs, you know, or something. So, you know, we are being cautioned against having strong currents of air passing through, or to be very careful about that. And there's some technical things about that. Like you want fresh air gently moving in consistently, but when you have a forceful, you want to be careful. You're not pushing the virus through forcefully, you know, or from a possible virus source and distributing it. So in the absence of any more information, I would say no, because I would be concerned that neck fan is moving whatever is on that person, you know, around the room. And I think there'd be other ways of trying to maintain comfort and enough cool for students other than that. But if I get some different data or information, I'll let you know. But I mean, as a district standard, I would have some difficulty with that. Just based on what little bit I think I know, I will look that up. And if I'm wrong, if I'm informed by science differently, I'll change my position. But right now, I would say no.
Also, just so I don't think we said this at the beginning, but Judah and I are going through the questions, and we usually end these about an hour and 15 minutes. So if we don't get to your questions do get cut and paste and sent to the administration, and then sometimes put on the frequently asked questions section of the website. So have no fear, it will get answered at some point there. And then as always, you can contact the administration on that and the school itself. We do have two questions that kind of now have come together. Security, there's a question about it being a new security company. Sorry. One of the questions was about it being a new security company, and are staff allowed to call the police if they think there's an intruder in the building? And the other one is about being that there's the security in this building, and not having more people in the building. What about class parents?
Okay, so we do have a new security firm that we're working with, and through that firm, we are in the process of hiring our new security guard for Ann Hutch. So we went through the interview process with several candidates, and they're all former retired police officers. Really strong candidates, so I'm really excited about that addition to our school building for sure. In terms of teachers calling the police, it's certainly within their right. I think the question might be more about like what do we train teachers to do in the event of an intruder? So I think it starts with You know, through the spring and into the summer, we've worked as a district to revise our entry protocol and making it consistent across the district. So a big part of the new security guard and family communication and teacher training in the beginning of the year will be around that entry protocol. You know, our teachers at Ann Hutch do a great job of anybody who you can't clearly see their ID. They will stop people and escort them back to the security guard. But in addition, we are trained to call a school lockdown, and any staff member has the ability to do that from their classroom phone. So they can make a school-wide announcement through their classroom phone, and that's something that we practice and are trained to do as well.
And will there be class parents this year? That was a question.
I imagine there would be class parents. I know that we are going to really communicate with families that any visit to the building, we're going to stress the importance of it being announced. But, you know, we will definitely have class parents, I imagine. Maybe the nature of their work in the building might be different. But I do think their support and leadership would be needed for sure.
I got a request that didn't come to the chat, so I'm going to bring that up next, even though it's not subject direct, because I don't want it to get lost. There were some expressions of concern about with the Chromebooks if either someone forgot it at home, someone forgot it at school, it got lost or stolen. A, in terms of being able to keep up with the work, and B, in terms of I guess that's the key thing, being able to keep up with the work. I guess if it's lost or stolen, we'll have to deal with that on an individual basis. But that was the question.
Yeah, I think that would be on a case-by-case basis. You mean like a loaner device if some use was disrupted?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Being able to keep up, what happens, or if someone goes home and they left it at school, the same sort of situation is, how are they going to make up that work or do their homework? But
right.
I suspect that's.
I wouldn't be as concerned about the leaving it at school. To me, that's always a lesson learned. You know what I mean? You miss it one day, it's not in the long term. We can pretend like it's a big deal, but we know in the long term it's not going to do any harm. But a loaner device that somehow use is disrupted, that would be more of an issue, and it would depend on if we had the resources to replace it. So I think we would have to, offer support in a case-by-case basis.
And then another question came up was, will the seats be assigned? So it'll be the same 2 kids on alternating days in the same seats, or do you expect things to be moving around more than that?
We would definitely be starting with assigned seats.
All right, I'm going back up.
Judah, is that the question? I see a question here, and I'm not sure if it's the same question you referenced. The question was, will the same 2 students sit on the shared seat who are alternating in the same class?
That's how I interpreted that question. Yeah.
Okay.
That's how I interpreted that question. If you interpret it differently, go ahead and ask.
No, I wasn't sure quite how to, I was not understanding it. So I think your interpretation is fine. If it has to do with sanitation, I mean, the rooms are thoroughly sanitized, if it's about sharing surfaces, we've got that handled through sanitation procedures.
Yeah. And I don't know if you saw it, but we just got a comment that I think is important to express a concern that about if we do allow personal fans to bring people to bring personal fans in the school, there probably should be a conversation about concerns about the fans actively spreading
Yeah.
and also causing noise disturbance to the classroom.
Yeah, let's just put that to bed. Don't bring fans. We're not allowing personal fans at this point. I don't think that's going to fly with guidelines. If it changes, I'll let you know. But since it keeps coming up, if we have to shut down school because it's too hot, I'd rather do that than have people bringing devices and stuff, fans and things.
That makes sense.
So yeah, I don't want there to be any ambiguity around that. Okay. Right now, I would, unless you hear otherwise, let's plan on not bringing personal fans.
And then there was a question earlier. You talked a little bit about the construction around the nurse's office and a little bit about the changes. How do you envision the nurse's office being managed? Is there anything more you want to add to that? Someone asked earlier.
Sure. So we've developed a protocol that we're going to follow. We do have a new nurse this year, Nurse Josie, who was at Waverly School this summer and has been a fantastic resource to me in recent weeks, and I think she's going to do a tremendous job. But we've been going over some district-wide protocols where any student visiting the nurse's office would be announced so that we know they're coming. And then we have those separate pathways where, as the student is assessed, they can either be directed towards a well visit or a sick visit. And so the space has been designed to accommodate that, and we have designed some backup space in the event there's multiple students in either of those areas so that they can be socially distanced. And then that would be our protocol in school. Did I fully answer that?
I think that was pretty good. And if not, I'm sure people will chime in, although we are getting late on time. And then someone asked earlier, just to confirm that the app is not a remote submit. In other words, the student, even if the student either brings the paper form or has the app on their device to show when they get to school, it's not something that's submitted from home. Is that correct?
It would be submitted, it would be entered into the app at home. And so I do think the earlier the family submits that, the more helpful it will be to the school. In the event the process is not working in the way I envision, it might be necessary for the student to bring the printed form to the building. But I'm not quite certain yet if that will be required of families.
So I can jump in a little bit here because I see another question about screenshots and so forth. So I have not personally seen the app, but I've had it described to me, just like Dr. Keene has. It looks like you're going to have the question was, can you take a screenshot of the app, of the outcome? I think anything that shows on the screen, screenshot, it will provide a verification on your phone you can show. And so screenshots would work, printed would work. We'd like to see that verification coming in the door. It saves us time and effort and keeps the lines moving and keeps everybody moving and flowing. If you don't have it, we're going to, as Dr. Keene mentioned, take temperature and admit you and then follow up later. We'll also have sorted lists of who entered everything in total that morning, and we'll push out a notification to you and to remind you to take the temperature and answer those questions before. So you'll have the push notification, the ability to do this on your phone or a computer, to show us on a screenshot or on the app on your phone if you can when you're dropping off, or to print something and bring it in. And if you fail to do that, we'll know who you are, and maybe not immediately when you hit the door, but hopefully. And if you don't have some verification, temperature is going to be taken at a minimum for that student who doesn't have the verification, just to make sure they're not running a fever above 100. And then we'll follow up.
Okay, I think we've answered most of the questions that have been asked. There is one more question about something about if contracting the virus. But that answer, I think, is on our frequently asked questions page that came from our presentation about last Monday evening by Dr. Urso and our school doctor. So I think that question can be is the answer for that is on there. But like I said in the beginning, we do take the questions and put them onto a spreadsheet, which goes to the administration. If that question isn't answered, it would be a question that would be answered on the frequently asked questions. I wanted to thank Dr. Glass and Dr. Keene for their time today, and of course Judah, he is our facilitator extraordinaire. I just wanted to say one thing prior to leaving, because I think this needs to be said. This came from one of the parents who is participating. Dr. Keene and her staff did an amazing job. He had the school year. We know they'll do an amazing job this time. So I just wanted to make sure that any teachers or Dr. Keene saw that. Thank you all the parents for participating, any staff members that are on here. As you know, you can contact us. We can, if one of us who's here or what have you can't get the answer, we can try to find out who can get the answer to you, and we're all in this together. So thank you very much for your time. We appreciate your time, and we appreciate the staff, administration, through everyone in the building's time. So thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great evening. Bye.